The little girl overheard the guards speaking German and saved the millionaire from a deadly trap you won't believe. The rain poured down relentlessly over the empty streets of Berlin. The sound of thunder echoed between the old stone buildings, and the city lights flickered under the storm. In the middle of the chaos, a small figure ran barefoot across the wet pavement, a little girl, no older than 10, clutching a torn coat around her tiny body. Her name was Anna. She had been wandering for hours, searching for a place to hide from the cold. Her hair was soaked, her hands trembling, and her lips pale. Every drop that fell from the dark sky seemed to echo the loneliness in her heart. Just as she was about to give up, a black luxury car stopped a few meters away. The headlights illuminated her frightened face. The door opened, and a tall man in a long coat stepped out. His presence alone commanded attention. Richard Wallace, a British millionaire known for his empire of international investments. At first, Anna froze. She didn't know whether to run or stay. The man's voice was deep, calm, and foreign. "Hey, are you all right, little one?" he asked in English, not realizing she might not understand him. But Anna surprised him by answering softly, in perfect English. I'm fine, sir. I just need somewhere warm." Wallace's eyes softened. He took off his coat and gently wrapped it around her shoulders. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said. "Where are your parents?" She looked down, silent. The answer was clear without words. Moved by something he couldn't explain, Wallace guided her to the car. His driver looked confused but said nothing. The billionaire's tone left no room for argument. Inside, the car was warm and filled with the faint scent of leather and coffee. Anna's eyes widened. She had never seen such luxury before. As the car moved through the rainy streets, Wallace studied the girl. There was something different about her, not just her intelligence, but a quiet strength in the way she held herself. "You speak English very well," he said, curious. "My mother taught me," Anna replied. Before she stopped mid-sentence, her voice cracking. Wallace didn't ask more. He simply nodded and offered a small smile. "You're safe now, Anna," he said gently. "We'll find you something warm to eat." For the first time in months, the little girl felt seen, not as a burden, but as a person. The storm outside continued to rage, but inside that car, a fragile bond was beginning to form, one that neither of them could have imagined would soon save his life. When they arrived at Wallace's hotel, the doorman rushed to open the umbrella, but the millionaire waved him off. He lifted Anna in his arms and carried her through the marble lobby as the rainwater dripped from his coat. Guests turned to watch in confusion. A powerful man holding a drenched child like a treasure. In that moment, destiny quietly began to weave its threads. The millionaire and the orphan girl, two souls from different worlds, had just stepped into each other's lives. Neither of them knew it yet, but that rainy night in Berlin would mark the beginning of a story that would soon test courage, trust, and the thin line between danger and salvation. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the elegant hotel suite. The storm had passed, leaving behind a soft golden glow over Berlin. Anna awoke in a large bed with white sheets that felt like clouds, so different from the cold pavement she had known the night before. On the table beside her, a tray of food awaited, warm bread, butter, and a cup of hot chocolate. She stared at it for a moment, afraid it wasn't real. Then, with hesitant hands, she reached for the bread and took a small bite. It melted in her mouth, soft, sweet, and comforting. A knock sounded at the door. "Good morning," came a familiar voice. Wallace stepped in, no longer wearing his raincoat but a crisp grey suit. His smile was kind yet distant, as if he was still unsure what to do with this unexpected guest. "You slept well, I hope?" he asked. Anna nodded shyly. "Yes, sir. Thank you for everything." He walked to the window, looking out at the busy streets below. "You remind me of someone," he said quietly. "My daughter, perhaps. She would be about your age now." Anna's eyes softened. "Where is she?" "Far away," Wallace murmured, avoiding her gaze. "She lives with her mother. I wasn't a very good husband or father." The silence that followed was heavy but gentle. Anna didn't speak. She just listened. There was something about her presence that made him feel at peace, as if she could understand without needing to ask. Later that day, Wallace had to attend a business meeting at the hotel. His assistant and bodyguards waited in the lobby, speaking in German, a language he barely understood. While the men discussed logistics, Anna stood nearby, quietly observing. When one of the hotel clerks struggled to explain something to Wallace in German, Anna stepped forward. "He says the conference room has been changed to the East Wing," she translated fluently. The men looked surprised. Wallace turned to her, genuinely impressed. "You speak German too?" "Yes, sir," she said with a small smile. "My mother taught me. She said words can open doors that money cannot." He chuckled softly. Wise woman. From that moment, something shifted. Wallace began to rely on Anna's help during his stay. Small things at first. Translating, taking notes, or simply keeping him company while he worked. She was bright, curious, and surprisingly perceptive for her age. That evening, as they walked through the hotel gardens, Wallace noticed how she stopped to feed a stray cat hiding near a bench. "You have a kind heart, Anna," he said. She smiled faintly. "Kindness doesn't cost anything, does it?" "No," he said, his eyes distant again. "But it's rarer than gold." He didn't realize it then, but that simple truth, spoken by a child, would soon save his life. As the wind rustled the trees and the city lights flickered in the distance, Anna looked up at the man beside her. In his face, she saw not just wealth or power, but sadness, the kind that only someone who had lost too much could carry. And though she didn't know why, she silently promised herself something. She would protect him, no matter what. 2 days had passed since the storm, and Berlin was now bathed in spring sunlight. The city moved with its usual rhythm, trams clattering, people rushing, tourists laughing. Yet, inside the top floor of the Grand Adler Hotel, a strange calm surrounded Richard Wallace and the little girl who had entered his life by chance. Anna sat quietly near the window, reading a small English book she had found on the desk. Her lips moved silently with every word, her concentration deep and genuine. Wallace, on the other side of the room, pretended to focus on business papers, but every few minutes his gaze drifted to her. She was different. There was something in her, a balance of innocence and wisdom that most adults had long forgotten. When his assistant, Mr. Keller, entered with a folder of contracts, Wallace gestured toward Anna. "She helped me with the staff again today," he said. "The hotel manager speaks only German." Keller smiled politely. "Remarkable child. But, sir, may I ask, what are your plans for her?" Wallace hesitated. The question caught him off guard. "Plans?" he repeated. "She has no family," Keller said softly, "and people are starting to talk. You can't keep her here forever, sir." Wallace looked out the window. Berlin stretched endlessly below, alive, loud, indifferent. "I know," he murmured, "but something tells me she's meant to stay a little longer." That afternoon, Wallace had an important meeting across town. It was a private negotiation with potential investors, powerful men who didn't always play fair. As usual, the conversation would be held partly in German, partly in English. When his interpreter called in sick, Wallace sighed in frustration. That's when Anna, standing nearby, quietly said, "I can help." He turned to her, surprised. "You?" "It's a business meeting, Anna. Complicated things." "I can listen and translate, sir," she insisted, her voice steady. "You said I'm good with words." For a moment, he wanted to refuse, to protect her from that cold adult world. But her determination made him pause. "All right," he finally said. "But you'll stay close to me. No speaking, unless I ask. Understood?" She nodded eagerly. Hours later, inside a sleek glass office overlooking the Spree River, Anna sat beside Wallace as the meeting began. The German businessman spoke rapidly, their words layered with politeness and hidden meaning. Anna's ears caught everything, even the things they didn't want translated. When one of them subtly mentioned the English fool who doesn't understand our real terms, Anna's eyes widened, but she stayed calm. She translated only what was necessary, but later, when they were alone, she told Wallace everything. He listened in silence, then smiled. "You saved me from signing something very stupid," he said. "You truly are remarkable, Anna." She blushed. "I just listened." "That's a rare skill," he said. Then, after a pause, he added thoughtfully, "How would you feel about traveling with me? I could use a translator and a little company." Her eyes lit up. "You mean leave Berlin?" "Yes, my next trip is to Zurich, then London." He smiled. "Think of it as an adventure." Tears welled up in her eyes, a mix of joy and disbelief. "No one's ever wanted me before," she whispered. "Well," Wallace said gently, "they should have." And at that moment, something changed forever. The lost girl and the lonely millionaire had just become partners in destiny, unaware that their journey together would soon lead them straight into danger. The private jet sliced through the clouds like a silver bird. Below, the patchwork fields of Europe stretched endlessly, fading into mist and sunlight. For Anna, it was like flying inside a dream, one that still didn't feel real. She sat by the window, her small hands pressed against the glass, eyes wide with wonder. It was her first time on an airplane, and everything fascinated her. The way the wings moved, the soft hum of the engines, the polite flight attendant who kept asking if she wanted juice or cookies. Beside her, Richard Wallace worked quietly on his laptop, though he couldn't help but smile every time she gasped in awe at the view. "Do you ever get used to this?" she asked suddenly, still staring outside. He chuckled. "You stop noticing the view after a while." "That's sad," she said, turning to him. "It's so beautiful." Wallace looked at her, realizing how much he had forgotten about simple beauty. "You're right," he said softly. "Maybe I should start noticing again." When they landed in Zurich, the world seemed even more unreal. Expensive cars lined the airport, and a convoy of security vehicles followed them to Wallace's mansion near Lake Zurich, a vast estate surrounded by gardens that looked like something out of a fairy tale. For Anna, it was overwhelming. She had spent years sleeping under bridges or in crowded shelters. Now she was walking across marble floors, and chandeliers glittered above her. "This is your home now," Wallace said kindly. "At least, for as long as you wish." She didn't know what to say. "It's too much," she whispered. "Luxury is only beautiful when it's shared," he replied. "Otherwise, it's just empty space." Over the next few days, Anna explored every corner of the mansion. The cooks adored her, the maids whispered about her, and even the stoic butler began to smile when she entered a room. Wherever she went, laughter followed. Yet despite the wealth surrounding her, Anna never lost her humility. She helped the staff carry trays, thanked everyone by name, and fed the birds by the lake every morning. One afternoon, Wallace found her in the library, a grand hall lined with thousands of books. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, reading an old atlas. "You could read any story in the world," he said, amused. "And you choose a map?" She smiled. "I like places. Each one has secrets, like people." Wallace nodded thoughtfully. "You think people have maps too?" "Yes," she said softly, "but most don't know how to read their own." Her words struck him deeper than she could have known. For all his money and power, Wallace had lost his direction long ago. That night, while they dined together by the window overlooking the lake, he asked her, "Anna, what do you want to be when you grow up?" She thought for a long moment. "Someone useful," she finally said. "Someone who makes a difference." He smiled warmly. "You already do." The moonlight shimmered on the water, and for the first time in years, Wallace felt something close to peace. The presence of that small, bright soul had softened the sharp edges of his world. But even as laughter echoed through the grand halls, shadows began to gather in the corners, unseen, silent, and waiting. In the following days, 2 new faces would arrive at the mansion, men dressed in black, polite but cold, new security guards, recommended by a trusted partner. Anna didn't know it yet, but their arrival would mark the beginning of everything that would soon test her courage and save a life. It began with the sound of tires on gravel. Anna looked up from the garden path as 2 black SUVs rolled to a stop at the entrance of the mansion. The afternoon light reflected off their polished surfaces like dark mirrors. From the first car stepped two men, tall, dressed in matching black suits and sunglasses, even though the sun was fading. Their movements were precise, their faces unreadable. The older one introduced himself as Vogel and the younger as Kurtz. "New members of the security team," Wallace explained later. "They come highly recommended from a partner in Berlin. You'll see them around." Anna nodded politely, but something about them made her uneasy. Maybe it was the way they never smiled, or the way their eyes, sharp and cold, seemed to calculate everything. That evening, as she helped one of the maids clear the dining table, Anna watched the men from a distance. They stood near the main hall, speaking in German, their tones low and serious. Wallace couldn't understand them, but Anna could. And though the words were harmless enough, the rhythm of their speech felt wrong. It wasn't the language that bothered her, it was the secrecy. Later that night, she found Wallace in his office, studying a file of business reports. "Do you trust them?" she asked quietly. He looked up, surprised. "Who? Vogel and Kurtz?" "Yes." Wallace smiled, assuming her question came from childish fear. "They're professionals, Anna. You don't have to worry." She hesitated. "Sometimes people hide bad things behind polite words." He chuckled softly. "You sound like someone who's seen too much of the world." "I have," she said simply. For a moment he studied her face, the seriousness in her eyes, the quiet strength in her small voice. There was no trace of childish imagination there, only truth. Still, he didn't want to frighten her. "They'll keep us safe," he said. "That's what matters." But safety, as it turned out, was an illusion. Over the next few days, Anna watched them closely. They checked the cars, guarded the gates, and escorted Wallace everywhere. Yet, when they thought no one was watching, they whispered, always in German, always in short, tense phrases. Once she passed by the garage and caught a glimpse of Vogel looking under the hood of Wallace's car, not inspecting, but adjusting something. When he noticed her, his expression froze for a second too long before he smiled thinly. "Just maintenance," he said. Anna nodded, pretending to believe him, but that night she couldn't sleep. The words she'd overheard swirled in her head, fragments of German sentences. Tomorrow, meeting, no mistakes. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. At breakfast the next morning, Wallace was cheerful. "We're going to Zurich's main office today," he said. "Keller will meet us there. Vogel and Kurtz will drive." Anna's heart dropped. She glanced at the two men, polite, expressionless, and then back at Wallace. Should she say something? Should she tell him what she'd heard? But what if she was wrong? What if he laughed, or thought she was imagining things? Still, the fear inside her grew with every passing minute. When she saw Vogel whisper to Kurtz again, her decision was made. She would listen, truly listen, to what they said next. And when she finally did, she would learn something that would make her blood run cold. That evening, the mansion was quiet, the grand halls empty, except for the soft ticking of the antique clocks. Wallace had retired early to review some documents, leaving Anna to wander through the corridors. The scent of polished wood and fresh flowers filled the air, a calm that made the tension in her chest sharper. She paused near the kitchen doorway when she heard voices, low, urgent, and in German. Vogel and Kurtz. Anna froze, pressing herself against the wall, listening intently. "Tomorrow he will be alone. No errors," Vogel's voice said, clipped and precise. Kurtz replied, "The car is ready. Once he enters, nothing will go wrong. You have the explosives?" Anna's heart stopped. Explosives? She peeked around the corner, careful not to let her presence be known. The men checked the car keys and the vehicle parked outside the garage. They whispered like shadows, their conversation almost ritualistic. "The east exit is clear. Security cameras are looped," Vogel said. Kurtz laughed softly, and a cold, humorless sound. "Perfect. By noon, the job is done." Anna's hands shook. She had never seen so much danger in one moment. This wasn't a threat she could ignore. Wallace, the man who had given her kindness, safety, and trust, was in danger. She backed away slowly, her mind racing. She needed to warn him. But how? When Wallace emerged from his office, Anna ran toward him, tugging at his sleeve. "Sir, don't go near the car," she shouted, her voice trembling. He turned, startled. "Anna, what is it? They're planning something. In German. The guards, they want to hurt you." Wallace frowned, confused. "Anna, what are you talking about?" She tried to translate the fragments she had heard. "They said explosives. Tomorrow, your car. Something will happen. Please, you have to trust me." For a moment, Wallace hesitated, unsure whether to believe a 10-year-old girl or the two professional security men he had trusted implicitly. But something in Anna's eyes, the honesty, the fear, the certainty, made him pause. He closed his laptop slowly, his mind racing. "Show me," he said firmly. "Show me everything you heard." Anna repeated the words carefully, translating as best she could. Wallace listened, then stood in silence, running his hands through his hair. "You're right," he said finally, his voice low but resolute. "Something is very wrong. We can't take any chances." Together they devised a plan. Wallace would inspect the car thoroughly, while Anna stayed close, translating anything suspicious they might overhear again. Later that night, they approached the garage. The black SUVs gleamed under the soft lights, shadows stretching across the concrete. Anna watched from the edge, holding her breath. As Wallace bent down to examine the interior of his car, Vogel and Kurtz appeared behind him, pretending to carry out routine checks. Anna's pulse raced. Every second felt like an eternity. Every whispered German word made her blood run cold. And when Wallace finally discovered the hidden explosives tucked under the driver's seat, he turned to Anna, astonished and grateful. "You saved my life," he whispered, eyes wide. "You really did." Anna swallowed hard, trying to appear calm. "I just listened," she said softly. But in that moment, Wallace knew it wasn't just listening. It was courage, the courage of a small girl who had seen danger and refused to look away. And though the night was far from over, the first battle had been won. The mansion was unusually quiet after the discovery of the explosives. Wallace had called the local authorities, but the men in black had vanished, leaving only a sense of unease lingering in the corridors. Anna sat on the edge of the grand staircase, her small hands clenched tightly in her lap. She couldn't stop thinking about what might have happened if she hadn't overheard Vogel and Kurtz speaking in German. Her chest tightened at the thought of Wallace stepping into that car, completely unaware of the danger waiting for him. Even though Wallace had thanked her, a small voice in her head whispered doubts. What if he doesn't understand the seriousness? What if he underestimates them? When Wallace entered the hall, Anna stood immediately, her eyes wide with worry. "Sir, are you sure they're gone?" she asked, her voice trembling. He smiled gently, trying to ease her fear. "Anna, the police will handle them. Everything is safe now." But Anna wasn't convinced. She had seen the cold calculation in Vogel's eyes, the way Kurtz moved silently, as if he could vanish into shadows at any moment. "They're professionals," she reminded herself. "They won't give up easily." She followed Wallace to the library, where he sat down with a glass of brandy to relax. Anna perched on a chair nearby, wringing her hands. "Sir, I think they might come back," she said softly. Wallace looked at her, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You're worried for me, aren't you?" Anna nodded. I don't want anything to happen to you. I promised I'd protect you." Wallace's expression softened. "Anna, your courage saved my life today. You were smarter than anyone else in this house. But that doesn't mean they won't try again," she whispered, glancing toward the dark windows where shadows of trees flickered in the moonlight. He reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Then we'll be ready, together." Despite his words, Anna couldn't shake the fear. Every creak in the mansion, every flutter of curtains in the night made her heart race. She realized that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was facing it, even when your small body shook with uncertainty. That night, she stayed awake, listening carefully. The slightest sound made her tense, Every passing car, every rustle of leaves, every whisper of wind was analyzed. She imagined Vogel and Kurtz plotting, planning their next move. By dawn, Anna was exhausted. but determined. She had made a silent promise to herself. No matter what happened, she would not let Wallace walk into danger again. When Wallace entered the room the next morning, he found Anna standing by the window, eyes sharp, alert, and resolute. He realized then that the little girl's fear had been transformed into something much stronger, a fierce determination that matched any adult's bravery. "Good morning, Anna," he said softly, a hint of admiration in his voice. "Good morning, sir," she replied, her gaze unwavering. "We need to be careful today. I think they're planning something." Wallace nodded slowly. "Then we'll move forward cautiously, step by step, together." And so the day began, with an unspoken tension in the air, a silent battle of wits and courage. Anna knew the real test was only beginning. The sun had barely risen over Zurich when Anna realized that today would be the most dangerous day of her young life. The mansion was alive with subtle tension. Wallace preparing for his morning meeting, the staff bustling quietly, and Anna herself pacing in the hall, her small frame taut with urgency. The black SUVs were ready in the driveway, polished and gleaming as if nothing had ever gone wrong. Vogel and Kurtz were already waiting, standing motionless beside the vehicles. Their sunglasses reflected the morning light, hiding any hint of emotion, but Anna could feel the cold calculation in their posture. She grabbed Wallace by the arm as he approached the car. "Sir, don't go!" she shouted, her voice shaking but firm. Wallace stopped, startled. "Anna, what is it?" They're planning something. The car, it's not safe," she insisted, translating fragments of German she had overheard again that morning. Vogel stepped forward, his face calm, smiling politely. "Everything is ready, sir," he said in German, then switched to English. "No need to worry." Anna's heart raced. She realized she had no time to hesitate. She pulled Wallace behind a column, out of sight from the men. "Please, sir, listen to me. There are explosives." Wallace's eyes widened. He looked at the two men, then at Anna, and felt the full weight of her warning. Her courage and honesty were undeniable, and it was clear she had risked everything to save him. Without another word, he nodded. "All right, show me the car." Anna led him to the garage, whispering every German word she had heard. Wallace bent down, inspecting the vehicle carefully. He felt under the seats, checked the pedals, and looked inside every compartment. Then his hand froze. There it was, a small, tightly concealed device beneath the driver's seat, wires snaking like black veins. He glanced at Anna, disbelief and relief fighting for dominance in his eyes. "You saved me," he breathed. She swallowed hard. "I just listened, but you have to be careful. They might try again." Wallace's mind raced. Vogel and Kurtz were watching from a distance, maintaining the perfect facade of professionalism. But now Wallace knew they could be capable of anything. The race against time wasn't over, not until the men were neutralized and the threat completely eliminated. He called his assistant, Keller, instructing him to alert the authorities and secure a backup team. Meanwhile, Anna stayed close, translating and interpreting any whispered words from the shadows. Minutes felt like hours. Every motion from Vogel and Kurtz seemed suspicious. Every glance felt like a warning. Anna's pulse pounded in her ears as she scanned the garage, ready to act at the first sign of danger. Finally, the police arrived. Vogel and Kurtz were intercepted as they tried to leave, their calm facades dissolving under the weight of the investigation. Wallace's car was rendered safe, and the threat neutralized for now. He turned to Anna, kneeling to meet her eyes. "Without you, I wouldn't be here. You were braver than anyone else in this world today." Anna blushed, trying to hide her pride. I just didn't want anything to happen to you," she said softly. Wallace smiled, a warmth in his eyes that even wealth couldn't buy. "You've proven yourself a hero, Anna, and heroes are always remembered." Outside, the city moved on as if nothing had happened, but inside the mansion, a bond had been forged, unbreakable, unshakable, and destined to shape the future of both the orphan girl and the millionaire she had saved. The morning was bright, but Anna's heart pounded like a drum. Even after the previous day's near disaster, she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling gnawing at her chest. She had saved Wallace once, but something in her gut told her the danger wasn't over. She found him in his study, reviewing emails with the calm demeanor of a man who believed he was finally safe. But Anna knew better. She closed the door behind her, took a deep breath, and stepped forward. "Sir, you can't go to the meeting today," she cried, her voice urgent. Wallace looked up, startled. "Anna, what now? The men were arrested yesterday. You saved me." "I know, but there could be others," she insisted. "I heard Vogel and Kurtz talking before they were caught." "They have accomplices. They plan to follow you." Wallace paused, realizing the seriousness in her tone. Her eyes were wide, determined, and unflinching. This was no childish fear. It was a warning forged from sharp observation and courage beyond her years. "All right," he said quietly. "Show me what you mean." Anna translated fragments of German overheard by Wallace's staff and from intercepted messages the police had captured. Each phrase painted a picture of a wider conspiracy. People within Wallace's circle working to sabotage him, others waiting in the shadows to seize the opportunity. Vogel and Kurtz had been the first line. Now she realized there could be more. Her mind raced. She had to act fast. "Sir, you have to trust me," she said firmly. "Don't go anywhere alone, please. We need a plan." Wallace nodded, impressed and touched by her determination. He immediately called Keller and the security team. Instructions were clear: no movement without backup, constant surveillance, and double checks on every route. Anna stayed close, watching every detail, translating every suspicious conversation, and noting every anomaly. Her eyes caught a glint of movement outside the windows, someone attempting to observe the mansion from a distance. "Look," she whispered urgently. "They're still here." Wallace's expression hardened. "All right, Anna, you've earned my trust completely. Lead the way. Let's make sure this ends today." Together, they devised a careful strategy. The backup team was positioned around the property, police were informed of the potential threat, and Anna had been given a walkie-talkie to report any unusual activity immediately. Hours later, as the city moved with deceptive normality, Anna spotted a suspicious figure approaching the mansion's gates. Her heart raced, but she didn't hesitate. "Sir, over here, they're coming!" she shouted, her voice echoing across the courtyard. Wallace looked up, saw the intruder, and immediately reacted. Security closed in and the figure attempted to flee, but Anna had already anticipated the move. Within moments, the threat was neutralized, restrained by the police and the mansion's security. Wallace turned to Anna, kneeling to meet her eyes. "You saved me again. I don't know how I can ever repay you." Anna smiled faintly, exhausted but triumphant. "Just promise me you'll always listen to your instincts." "And mine," she said softly. He nodded, his voice filled with gratitude and admiration. "I promise. You're braver than anyone I've ever known." That day, Anna realized something profound. Courage wasn't the absence of fear. Courage was the strength to act, to warn, and to protect those you cared about, no matter the odds. And for Wallace, it became clear. The little girl he had met in the rain was more than an orphaned stranger. She was his guardian angel, and the bond between them had grown stronger than any danger could sever. The mansion was quiet that evening, but inside Wallace's study, a storm of thoughts raged. He sat behind the large mahogany desk, staring at the documents before him, but his mind was elsewhere, on Anna. For days, she had risked everything, warned him, guided him, and acted with a courage that far exceeded her years. And now, after the latest attempt on his life had been thwarted, Wallace felt a mixture of awe, gratitude, and a deep, unsettling realization. He had underestimated the power of a child's intuition. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. How many times had I trusted the wrong people, he wondered. And here was a little girl, seeing things I couldn't even imagine. Anna entered quietly, carrying a small cup of cocoa. "Sir, I thought you might like something warm," she said softly, setting it on the desk. Wallace looked up at her and smiled, but it was different this time, a smile that carried weight, respect, and a newfound admiration. "Thank you, Anna," he said, "for everything." She tilted her head, unsure what to say. I just didn't want anything to happen to you," she admitted. He nodded, leaning forward. "I know. And that's what makes you remarkable. You've taught me something important. Wealth, power, influence. None of that matters if you don't pay attention to the people around you. If you don't listen." Anna's small hand found his and squeezed it gently. Wallace was startled by the gesture, but didn't pull away. "You're braver than I am, Anna," he said quietly. "You've faced danger I never even imagined, and you never hesitated." She looked down, blushing faintly. I just did what felt right." He smiled again, a warm, genuine smile. "That's what heroes do. They act because it's right, not because it's easy." For the first time in years, Wallace felt a sense of clarity. The luxurious life he had built, the power and influence he had amassed, all of it seemed secondary. What truly mattered was trust, courage, and the bonds you form with those who care about you. He realized that Anna had not only saved his life physically, but she had also opened his eyes to a deeper kind of wealth, one measured in loyalty, love, and bravery. "Anna," he said finally, his voice firm yet tender, "from now on, you will always have a place by my side. Not just as a translator, not just as a helper, but as someone I trust completely." Her eyes widened. "Really?" "Yes," he replied. "You've proven yourself in ways that words cannot describe. You've saved me twice now, once from danger and once from my own ignorance." Anna smiled faintly, overwhelmed by the praise, but inside she felt proud. It wasn't about recognition, it was about trust, and Wallace had given her his completely. That night, as the mansion settled into silence, Wallace reflected on how one small child had changed the course of his life. He thought of the rain-soaked streets where he had first met her, the fear in her eyes, and the courage she had shown despite it. He realized that from this day forward, he would never see the world the same way again. Anna had shown him that even the smallest voice could echo louder than wealth, louder than power, louder than danger itself. And as he watched her quietly organizing the study, making sure everything was in order, Wallace felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't known in years, a sense of hope, trust, and a bond stronger than anything money could buy. The police had done their job efficiently, but the tension inside the mansion hadn't fully lifted. Vogel and Kurtz had been taken into custody, their calm facades replaced by confusion and frustration. Wallace stood in the center of the study, Anna close by, waiting for the interrogation report. The first officer to arrive had a grim expression. "Sir, the men weren't acting alone," he said. "There's a network, accomplices, insiders who planned the attack. We need to uncover them before they strike again." Wallace's brow furrowed. "Insiders?" The officer nodded. "Yes, people close to you who may have knowledge of your routines, schedules, and weaknesses." Anna's small hand shot up. "Sir, I think I can help. I heard Vogel and Kurtz speaking before. I can translate anything else they say. Maybe it will tell us who else is involved." Wallace looked at her with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. "Anna, you've already saved my life twice. If you think you can help, then we will need every advantage we can get." Later that day, the interrogation room was tense. Vogel and Kurtz were seated across from the police officers, their hands cuffed, expressions carefully neutral. Anna sat nearby, translating as needed. Vogel's cold eyes flicked toward Anna. "How much does the child understand?" he asked in German. Anna remained silent at first, then translated his words carefully for the officer. "He asked how much I understand," she said simply, maintaining her composure. Kurtz sneered. "A child should not interfere in adult matters." Anna's voice was steady as she translated, "He says a child should not interfere in adult matters." Wallace watched from the observation room, feeling a mixture of pride and relief. Anna was calm, confident, and unafraid, qualities that no one in the mansion had expected from a 10-year-old girl. As the interrogation progressed, Vogel and Kurtz began to reveal small details, hints about accomplices, their schedules, and potential weaknesses in Wallace's security. Anna translated every word, her sharp mind connecting the pieces like a puzzle. Suddenly, a name emerged, one of Wallace's own assistants, Keller. Wallace's heart skipped a beat. He had trusted Keller implicitly for years. Could it be possible that someone so close had betrayed him? Anna noticed his reaction. "Sir, it's okay. We can handle this," she said, her voice calm despite the fear creeping through her chest. Wallace nodded, regaining his composure. "Yes, with your help, Anna, we will uncover the truth." By the end of the day, the first pieces of the conspiracy had been identified. The guard's capture and Anna's translations revealed a shocking reality. Wallace's enemies were closer than he had ever imagined, and the danger was far from over. Yet amidst the tension and uncertainty, one thing became clear. Anna's courage and intelligence were the key to navigating the peril ahead. Wallace realized that the little girl he had met in the rain was no longer just an orphaned companion. She had become his partner, his protector, and the only one who could see through the shadows that threatened his life. And as they left the interrogation room together, Wallace looked down at Anna and whispered, "We're in this together, no matter what comes next." Anna smiled faintly, her eyes sharp and unwavering. "I know, sir. And we won't fail." The morning sun cast long shadows over the mansion grounds, but the calm was deceptive. Wallace moved through the hallways with a cautious air, aware that the conspiracy uncovered in the interrogation room was far from over. Anna followed closely, her small frame alert, eyes scanning every corner. Earlier that day, the police had reinforced security, but Wallace knew that professional criminals could be unpredictable, and Anna, wise beyond her years, had sensed something unusual in the quiet of the servants' quarters. "Sir, I think someone is trying to bypass the cameras," she whispered urgently, tugging on his sleeve. Wallace stopped mid-step, his eyes narrowing. "Where?" "Near the east garage. I saw shadows this morning. Someone trying to hide from the cameras," she said, her voice steady despite the rising fear in her chest. Without hesitation, Wallace followed her to the garage, signaling to the backup security team to approach cautiously. Anna's eyes darted from shadow to shadow, translating whispered German words she could hear faintly from outside. Suddenly, one of the black SUVs parked near the east entrance began to move. Wallace froze. He hadn't authorized any movement. Anna's instincts kicked in immediately. "Sir, stop! Don't get in! Stop!" she shouted, pushing him back just as the SUV's door opened. Vogel's accomplice, another man in black, emerged, a small detonator in hand, aiming at Wallace's vehicle. In a split second, Anna lunged forward, yanking Wallace behind a nearby column. The shot intended for the car detonator failed, the device harmlessly bouncing off the concrete. Wallace's eyes widened in shock. "Anna, how did you—" "I just listened!" she shouted over the noise, her small body shaking, but her determination unwavering. The security team, alerted by the movement, swarmed the intruder, subduing him before he could attempt anything further. The backup police officers arrived moments later, handcuffing the would-be attacker and ensuring the area was secure. Wallace turned to Anna, kneeling beside her. "You saved my life again," he whispered, awe in his voice. "I don't know how to thank you properly." Anna shook her head, exhausted but resolute. "Just promise me we'll be careful. We can't let anyone else surprise us." He smiled faintly, a mixture of pride and gratitude softening his usually guarded expression. "I promise. You've proven yourself braver than anyone else I know, even me." For Anna, it was more than praise. It was recognition of the courage and intelligence she had displayed, qualities that had always existed inside her, even when the world around her seemed cruel and indifferent. That evening, Wallace made a quiet decision. He would never underestimate the power and wisdom of a child again, nor would he rely solely on wealth and influence to protect himself. Anna had shown him that real strength came from vigilance, courage, and the willingness to act in the face of danger. As they walked back to the mansion, the sun setting behind the distant hills, Wallace looked at Anna and said softly, "You've changed everything for me, Anna. You're not just my translator or companion. You're my guardian angel." Anna's small hand slipped into his, her eyes shining with quiet determination. "Then we'll face whatever comes next. Together," she replied. And in that moment, the bond between the orphan girl and the millionaire grew stronger than any threat could ever break. The mansion was quiet that evening, but inside Wallace's private study, a storm of emotion raged. He sat at his desk, staring at the papers in front of him, yet his mind was far from business. Every thought turned to Anna, the small girl who had saved his life, not once, but multiple times. He leaned back, reflecting on everything that had happened. The near-deadly trap in the car, the attempts by Vogel and Kurtz, the intruder at the garage, and through it all, Anna had acted without hesitation. Her courage, intelligence, and intuition had outmatched trained adults. Wallace realized something profound. He had been living a life of wealth and power, surrounded by people who served him out of obligation, greed, or fear. Yet here was a child, an orphan with nothing, who had proven herself more trustworthy than anyone he had ever known. He stood and walked to the window, looking out over the sprawling estate. The city lights twinkled in the distance, but they felt small compared to the warmth he felt toward Anna. When she entered quietly, carrying a small tray with cocoa and biscuits, Wallace turned to her. "Anna," he said softly, "come here." She approached cautiously, unsure what to expect. "I've been thinking," he continued, "about everything you've done for me, about the courage you've shown, the quick thinking, the bravery. I can't thank you enough. Words aren't enough." Anna looked down, blushing. "Sir, I just did what felt right." He shook his head, smiling. "No, you did what only a hero could do. And heroes deserve more than thanks. They deserve recognition, respect, and care." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small envelope. "I want you to have this," he said. Inside were documents granting Anna full guardianship privileges over her future, education, security, and care, ensuring she would never be vulnerable again. Her eyes widened, and she gasped softly, "Sir, I can't take this." "You can," he insisted. "You've more than earned it. You've saved my life. You've shown me the meaning of courage and loyalty. From now on, you are not just my companion. You are my family." Tears welled in Anna's eyes. She had never imagined anyone caring for her so deeply, never imagined someone trusting her with so much. I promise I'll never let you down," she whispered. Wallace smiled, a rare warmth softening his usually guarded expression. "You already haven't. You've changed my life, Anna. You've reminded me that wealth, power, and influence mean nothing without trust, courage, and loyalty." That night, as Anna settled in her room, no longer a child wandering alone in the streets, but a cherished part of Wallace's world, he stood by the window, watching over her. He realized that true gratitude was more than saying thank you. It was ensuring safety, happiness, and opportunity for those who mattered most. And Anna mattered more than anyone else in the world. In that quiet moment, Wallace made a vow to protect her as fiercely as she had protected him, to trust her instincts, and to let her courage continue shaping the course of their lives. And Anna, tucked in her bed, felt the warmth of belonging for the first time. She wasn't just a child who had saved a millionaire. She was someone who mattered, someone whose bravery had forever changed the course of 2 lives. Despite the calm that had settled over the mansion after the previous attacks, Anna couldn't shake the sense that danger still lingered. Even with Vogel and Kurtz in custody, shadows moved quietly in the corners of her mind. She had learned to trust her instincts, and they screamed that the conspiracy wasn't over. That morning, Anna noticed subtle changes. Unfamiliar faces among the staff, a new delivery arriving at odd hours, and small inconsistencies in security logs. Each anomaly felt insignificant to others, but to Anna, they were warning signs. She approached Wallace quietly as he reviewed reports in his study. "Sir, there's something wrong," she said, urgency in her voice. Wallace looked up, giving her his full attention. What do you mean? I don't know yet, but I can feel it. There are people still watching, waiting. We need to be careful, she explained. Wallace leaned back, his expression thoughtful. Anna, you're incredible. You've been right before, multiple times. Let's investigate. Together, they began a methodical review of recent activity, surveillance footage, staff schedules, delivery logs, and financial records. Anna's sharp mind picked up inconsistencies that even trained security professionals might have overlooked. Hours later, she pointed to the corner of a grainy surveillance frame. Look, that person. They've been in the mansion repeatedly, disguised as staff. See how they move silently between rooms? Wallace squinted at the footage. Good catch. That's the kind of detail most would miss. Who do you think they are? Anna shook her head. I don't know yet, but whoever they are, they're planning something. We need to find them before it's too late. As the day went on, their investigation uncovered a web of subtle sabotage, tampered locks, missing keys, and traces of unauthorized communication devices hidden in the estate. Anna translated intercepted messages in German, revealing hints of a coordinated plan to target Wallace again. Wallace was impressed and deeply concerned. You've uncovered a network within our own walls. This is serious, Anna. I know, she said, her voice firm despite the tension. We can't trust anyone completely. We have to be ready for anything. That evening, while Anna inspected the security perimeters, she spotted movement near the eastern gate. A figure dressed in black lingered in the shadows, just out of the camera's direct view. Her pulse quickened, but she stayed calm, observing carefully. Sir? She whispered urgently into her walkie-talkie. There's someone outside, not part of the security team. They're waiting, watching. Wallace responded immediately, adrenaline sharpening his instincts. Keep your distance, Anna. Don't confront them alone. But Anna's gaze never left the figure. Every instinct screamed that this threat was real, unseen, silent, and deadly. She realized that courage wasn't just about rushing into danger. Sometimes it was about watching, waiting, and acting at the exact right moment. And she knew that moment was coming. As night fell over the mansion, shadows deepened, and the unseen threats that had been lingering finally began to reveal themselves. For Anna and Wallace, the real test of courage and trust was only beginning. The night was unusually still, the mansion bathed in moonlight that cast long, eerie shadows across the hallways. Anna moved silently, her small figure gliding through the corridors with the precision of someone who had learned to observe everything. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind made her senses sharper. Earlier that day, she had been reviewing the intercepted messages in German, translating carefully for Wallace. Each phrase seemed mundane at first, but patterns began to emerge. Codes, instructions, and subtle references that connected back to Keller, Wallace's long-trusted assistant. Anna's heart raced. Could it be possible that someone so close to Wallace was involved? She had never suspected it. Keller had always seemed loyal, dependable, and unflappable. Sir, she said, approaching Wallace in the study, I think Keller is involved in the conspiracy. Wallace froze, disbelief etching his face. Keller? That's impossible. He's been with me for years. Anna shook her head, her voice firm. I know it sounds impossible, but look at these messages. He's been coordinating with Vogel and Kurtz. He knows our schedules, our security routines. He's the reason they always seemed one step ahead. Wallace took the documents from her trembling hands, reading the translated messages. Every word hit him like a shockwave. The betrayal was closer than he had imagined, inside his own mansion, inside his own circle of trust. I can't believe this, he whispered, looking at Anna. You were right. Again. Anna nodded. We have to act fast. He could be planning something tonight. They moved carefully, devising a strategy. Wallace would confront Keller, but Anna would stay nearby, translating, observing, and ready to warn him of any deception. Every step had to be calculated. Any misstep could be fatal. When they reached Keller's office, the assistant looked up, feigning surprise. Sir, Anna, What brings you here so late?" Wallace's voice was calm but resolute. "Keller, we know everything. The messages, the coordination with Vogel and Kurtz. You've betrayed my trust." Keller's composure faltered for the first time. His eyes darted to Anna, realizing that the small girl had been the one to uncover the truth. "This isn't what you think," he said, his tone defensive. Anna stepped forward, translating every word for Wallace. She noticed subtle gestures, Keller's hands trembling, his eyes shifting, signs of guilt he couldn't hide. "No," Wallace said firmly, "it's exactly what I think. You've endangered lives, including mine, and thanks to Anna, your plans have failed." Keller's face paled. How did she find out?" "She listened," Wallace said, a mix of awe and respect in his voice. "She saw patterns. She heard things we missed. She's the reason I'm still alive." Anna stood quietly, letting Wallace speak. She didn't boast, didn't smile. Her courage was quiet, steady, and unyielding. By the end of the night, Keller was taken into custody, the evidence airtight. The network of betrayal had been exposed, and Wallace's mansion was finally secure, at least for now. Wallace looked down at Anna, kneeling to meet her eyes. "You did this," he said softly. "You uncovered the truth that none of us could see." Anna shrugged, still calm. "I just paid attention and listened." Wallace smiled, a warmth in his chest he hadn't felt in years. "You're more than a child. You're my hero, Anna, and I will never forget what you've done." Outside, the city slept peacefully, unaware of the drama that had unfolded in the mansion. Inside, one small girl had changed the course of events, proving that courage, intelligence, and a sharp mind could triumph over even the deepest betrayal. The mansion was eerily silent that evening, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Wallace felt an uneasy tension he hadn't experienced before. Even with Keller and the conspirators in custody, instinct warned him that danger still lingered. Anna sensed it too. Her small frame moved silently through the halls, eyes sharp, ears straining for any hint of trouble. Every shadow seemed to shift suspiciously. Every quiet sound felt amplified. "Sir," she whispered urgently, appearing at his side. "Something's wrong. I can feel it." Wallace nodded, trusting her instincts more than ever. "Then let's be careful. Stick close to me." They made their way to the garage, where Wallace's armored car stood ready for the evening. Anna's eyes scanned the surroundings, noticing details even trained security might miss. Slight scratches on the pavement, a faint reflection of light in the distance, and the subtle scent of gasoline. Not from the car, but from a small container hidden nearby. Her heart sank. "Sir, explosives," she said, pointing to the concealed device. "They've set another trap. Someone knew we'd checked the car earlier. They're trying again." Wallace's pulse quickened, but his trust in Anna's courage steadied him. "Good eye, Anna. Let's call the police and evacuate the perimeter immediately." Before they could act, a shadow moved rapidly toward them. It was another accomplice, masked, intent on triggering the device. Anna reacted instinctively. "Watch out!" she shouted, grabbing Wallace and pulling him behind the vehicle just as the intruder lunged at the car. The device detonated with a loud boom, but thanks to Anna's quick reflexes, neither of them was harmed. The force rattled the garage doors and set off alarms, alerting the mansion's security team and police. Chaos erupted as officers swarmed the intruder, subduing him before he could escape. Wallace stood, catching his breath, while Anna's small chest heaved from adrenaline. "You saved us again," Wallace said, awe in his voice. "I don't know how to thank you." Anna shook her head, exhausted but determined. I just did what I had to do. We can't be careless, sir. Not now." He looked at her, realizing that her bravery went far beyond instinct. Anna had become his guardian, his partner, and the single most reliable person in his life. Once the intruder was secured and the explosive device dismantled, Wallace turned to Anna. "From now on, no matter what happens, I will always listen to you. Your courage, your instincts, they've saved me more times than I can count." Anna smiled faintly, her eyes gleaming with quiet strength. "Then we'll always be ready, sir. Together." That night, as the mansion finally settled into a peaceful stillness, Wallace reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From a rainy street to near-death traps, from betrayal to courage, one small girl had changed the course of his life entirely. And Anna knew one thing for certain: vigilance, courage, and trust were their greatest weapons. As long as they had each other, no trap, no matter how clever or deadly, could defeat them. The final trap had been sprung and survived, but their story was far from over. The mansion hummed with activity the next morning, but Wallace felt an unease he couldn't shake. Despite the successful thwarting of the final trap, shadows of doubt lingered. Could he trust everyone around him? Could anyone be relied upon in a world where betrayal had lurked so close? Anna, sensing his inner turmoil, approached quietly. "Sir, you look worried," she said, her small hand brushing his sleeve. Wallace sighed, looking down at her with a mixture of gratitude and concern. "Anna, I've trusted many people over the years, but now, after everything, I don't know who I can count on anymore." Her eyes met his, steady and unflinching. "You can trust me," she said simply. "I've never let you down, and I won't start now." Her words comforted him, but doubt lingered. Wallace realized that the threat wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Trust, once broken, was difficult to rebuild, even for someone as rational as him. Later, as he met with his remaining staff, Wallace noticed small discrepancies: files missing, subtle alterations in schedules, and hushed conversations that ceased when he entered the room. The unease grew stronger. He called Anna to his side. "Keep your eyes and ears open," he instructed. "If anything seems suspicious, tell me immediately. No one else can be trusted fully yet." Anna nodded, her senses razor-sharp. She began observing the staff, analyzing movements and interactions, translating whispers and noting anything unusual. Her small frame moved like a shadow, unnoticed yet fully aware of the undercurrents around her. By mid-afternoon, she discovered a pattern. One of the housekeepers had been passing subtle signals to an unknown visitor outside the mansion. Anna translated a series of whispered phrases in German that hinted at a new plan. A minor, seemingly harmless disruption that could escalate into something dangerous if ignored. "Sir," she whispered urgently, "there's someone trying to manipulate the staff. It's small, but it could grow. We need to confront them before it becomes serious." Wallace nodded, realizing the truth. Even after all the previous threats, vigilance was still essential. Trust couldn't be given blindly. It had to be earned, constantly reinforced and carefully monitored. Together, they confronted the housekeeper, who quickly broke under questioning. The motives were revealed. Jealousy, fear, and the remnants of Keller's influence had created a ripple of subtle sabotage. Wallace listened, astonished at Anna's keen perception and timely translation. "You've done it again, Anna," he said softly. "You've uncovered the hidden threats that no one else noticed. Without you, I wouldn't know where the danger truly lies." Anna shrugged, faintly smiling. "I just pay attention, and I trust my instincts." Wallace realized that her courage and intellect were invaluable. More than any security system, more than wealth, more than power. She had proven that trust was a skill, a bond, and a responsibility, not something to be taken lightly. As evening fell over the mansion, Wallace made a vow. From now on, Anna's instincts and observations would guide his decisions, and he would rebuild his world of trust around her wisdom. Anna, standing quietly by his side, felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that vigilance and courage would be their greatest allies, and together they would face whatever shadows remained, ready, unflinching, and united. The mansion had finally begun to feel almost normal again, though Wallace and Anna remained vigilant. Despite the previous threats being neutralized, the tension lingered in the air like a faint, unshakable fog. That afternoon, a quiet knock echoed through the main entrance. Wallace frowned. Visits were rare, and he wasn't expecting anyone. Anna, ever alert, peered through the window and immediately felt that something was unusual. "Sir, this visitor, I don't recognize them," she whispered, her instincts on high alert. Wallace approached the door cautiously. When he opened it, a tall, composed figure in a well-tailored suit stepped inside. The visitor's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the chaos that had dominated the mansion for weeks. "Good afternoon, Mr. Wallace," the man said, his voice smooth and confident. "My name is Victor Reinhardt. I've come to assist you." Wallace's eyes narrowed. "Assist me? And why should I trust you?" Victor smiled faintly. "I've been tracking Vogel and Kurtz for months. I've been aware of the network surrounding you, and I can help ensure your safety. But first, I need to gain your trust, and Anna's." Anna tilted her head, studying the man carefully. Every detail mattered. The way he stood, the way his eyes moved, the precision of his speech. Her instincts whispered caution, yet she sensed a genuine aura of competence and loyalty. Wallace glanced at her. "Anna, what do you think?" She stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "I'm not sure yet, sir, but we can test him. If he truly wants to help, he'll prove it." Victor nodded in understanding. "I expected nothing less. Let me start by showing you information you might have missed about Keller's network and the accomplices who remain at large." He produced a briefcase, opening it to reveal meticulously organized documents, intercepted communications, and surveillance data. Anna leaned in, translating quickly from German where necessary, her sharp mind piecing together patterns that even Wallace had overlooked. Hours passed as Victor guided them through the intelligence. His knowledge was detailed, precise, and actionable. Slowly, both Wallace and Anna realized that this unexpected ally could be the key to finally neutralizing every remaining threat. By the end of the session, Wallace was convinced. "You've been invaluable, Victor, but I need to see your loyalty in action before fully trusting you." Anna's eyes gleamed with determination. "I agree, sir. Words are not enough. Actions will prove who we can trust." Victor smiled faintly. "I understand. You'll have your proof soon." As night fell, Wallace felt a renewed sense of hope. For the first time in weeks, he sensed that the mansion might finally be secure, and that their team, now including this unexpected ally, could face the remaining dangers together. Anna, standing silently by his side, knew one thing with certainty: vigilance, courage, and intelligence were their strongest weapons. And now, with Victor's arrival, they had another edge. The shadows that had haunted the mansion for so long would soon be illuminated, and every threat would be met with unwavering resolve. The mansion was tense, every corridor and hallway alive with quiet anticipation. Wallace, Anna, and Victor moved with precision, knowing that the remaining conspirators could strike at any moment. The web of betrayal had been mostly unraveled, but the final confrontation loomed, the moment when vigilance, courage, and strategy would be put to the ultimate test. Anna led the way, her small frame moving silently, eyes scanning for the slightest movement. She whispered translations of intercepted German commands, giving Wallace and Victor the advantage of knowing the enemy's plans in real time. "They're in the West Wing," she said, pointing to the map spread on the table. "3 men, armed. They think the mansion is vulnerable tonight." Wallace nodded, taking a deep breath. "All right. Victor, you take the north entrance. I'll move through the main hall. Anna, stay with me. I need your eyes and ears." Her heart raced, but Anna's expression remained calm. "Understood, sir," she said, gripping her small flashlight tightly. "Let's do this carefully. One mistake and—" She didn't finish the sentence, but the unspoken threat was clear. As they approached the West Wing, shadows shifted. The conspirators, believing they had the upper hand, didn't anticipate Wallace's meticulous strategy or Anna's keen observation. Suddenly, one of the men stepped forward, attempting to ambush them. Anna reacted instinctively, grabbing Wallace's sleeve and pulling him behind a column, just as the intruder raised his weapon. Victor appeared at the north entrance, neutralizing another conspirator with calculated precision. The mansion echoed with shouts, the clash of movement and the unmistakable sound of a high-stakes confrontation. Anna, small but fearless, used the shadows to her advantage. She spotted a concealed explosive device under a side table, a trap meant for Wallace. Without hesitation, she signaled Victor and Wallace, who disarmed it in seconds. The remaining conspirators realized too late that they were outmatched. Anna's translations had given Wallace and Victor the critical insight to anticipate every move. One by one, the attackers were subdued, handcuffed, and taken into custody by the backup police team. When the final conspirator was secured, Wallace turned to Anna, kneeling to meet her eyes. You saved us again. I don't know how I could have done this without you." Anna shook her head, exhausted but resolute. "I just did what needed to be done, sir. We've prepared, we've watched, and we acted. That's all." Victor approached, giving a respectful nod. "The mansion is secure. Thanks to her insight, none of you were harmed. She is truly remarkable." Wallace smiled, a warmth and admiration in his eyes that no words could fully express. "Remarkable is not enough. Anna, you are my hero. You've shown courage, intelligence, and loyalty beyond anyone I've ever known." For Anna, it was more than recognition. It was the acknowledgement that her instincts, bravery, and intelligence mattered, that she had made a difference in a world that had often ignored her. As the sun began to rise, casting light across the mansion grounds, Wallace, Anna, and Victor stood together, victorious. The conspirators had been defeated, the traps dismantled, and the mansion secure once more. Anna glanced at Wallace, her eyes determined. "Sir, whatever comes next, we'll be ready." Wallace nodded, the weight of gratitude and trust heavy in his chest. "Yes, Anna, together we can face anything." And in that moment, the bond forged through courage, peril, and unwavering loyalty shone brighter than any threat that could ever come their way. The morning sun bathed the mansion in warm, golden light, signaling not just a new day, but a new chapter in the lives of Wallace and Anna. The mansion, once a place of shadows and hidden threats, now felt alive with a sense of safety, trust, and possibility. Wallace stood in the grand hall, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. From the rainy streets where he had first met Anna to the countless dangers she had helped him survive, he realized that his life had been forever changed. It wasn't just that she had saved him repeatedly. It was that she had opened his eyes to the value of courage, loyalty, and trust. Anna appeared beside him, small but steadfast, her eyes bright with determination. She had grown in confidence, her bravery tempered by experience, and her heart full of purpose. "Sir," she said softly, "everything is peaceful now, at least for the moment." Wallace smiled warmly. "Yes, thanks to you, Anna. You've saved my life, guided me through danger, and shown me what it means to trust someone fully. I can never repay you, but I can promise this. You'll always have a place here, a home and a family." Anna's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I've never had that before. A family, someone who truly cares," she whispered. "Thank you, sir." He crouched down, meeting her gaze. "No, thank you, Anna. You've taught me more than any fortune, any power, or any ally ever could. You've shown me that real strength comes from courage and heart, qualities you have in abundance." Outside, the world moved on, unaware of the danger, betrayal, and heroism that had unfolded within these walls. But inside the mansion, a bond had been forged that could never be broken. Wallace and Anna had faced unimaginable threats together, and through every challenge, their trust in one another had only deepened. Victor joined them in the hall, giving a respectful nod. "The threats have been neutralized. The mansion is secure," he said. "And thanks to Anna, every step of the conspiracy was anticipated. She is truly extraordinary." Anna smiled faintly, modest yet proud. "I just watched and listened," she replied. Wallace placed a protective hand on her shoulder. "Watching and listening saved lives. That is extraordinary." In the following weeks, Wallace began to rebuild not just his home, but his approach to life. He reinstated security with careful planning, trusted those who had proven themselves, and relied on Anna's insight for guidance. For her part, Anna embraced her new role, confident and secure in the knowledge that she was valued, respected, and loved. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Wallace and Anna stood on the balcony, looking out over the city. "You've changed my life, Anna," he said quietly, "and I hope, in some way, I've changed yours." She smiled, leaning slightly against him. "You have, sir. You've shown me what it means to belong, to be trusted, and I'll always be here to watch over you, just as you've watched over me." The mansion was no longer a place of fear, but a home filled with courage, trust, and love. The shadows had been banished, replaced by the unshakable bond between a millionaire and the small girl who had become his guardian angel. And as the stars emerged in the night sky, both knew one simple truth. Together, they could face anything the world had to offer, and a new beginning awaited them, brighter, safer, and full of hope.